Don't skip. Why is it that even after the messages stop, the phone grows silent and you've genuinely moved on? She's still there, not in your life, but in the background of her mind, still thinking, still feeling, still wondering why it's so hard to forget you. This isn't obsession. It isn't weakness. It's not about emotional immaturity or attachment issues. It's something deeper, quieter. A mark left not by your words, but by your energy, your presence, your peace. You didn't chase. You didn't beg for closure. You didn't perform a dramatic goodbye. You simply left, calmly, silently, with dignity. And that's what unsettled her most. In today's video, we're going to dive into why some women find it incredibly difficult to let go of a man who embodies stoic strength and emotional discipline. Not because he needed to stay, but because he had the courage to walk away with his self-respect intact. You'll discover why masculine detachment, emotional clarity, and grounded stillness leave a longer impression than any emotional breakdown ever could. Let's begin. 1. The emotional trace. She can't erase. When a connection ends, most expect a certain emotional ritual. Tears, arguments, maybe even late-night "I miss you" texts. But when you didn't follow that script, when you chose peace over drama, you left her with something she didn't anticipate: silence. That silence became presence. She doesn't miss you because of a dramatic exit. She misses you because your absence was dignified. No tantrums, no guilt-tripping, just a quiet goodbye that spoke louder than 1,000 words. The emotional trace you left didn't live in your last text. It lives in the still moments of her day. A song, a memory, a quiet cafe, a man who reminds her of the steadiness you carried. You weren't trying to be remembered, but you were unforgettable. That's what Stoicism is. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. It's acting from principle, not impulse. You felt the pain, but you didn't become the pain. And now, in her chaotic world, you are stillness personified. You didn't try to control how she viewed you. You just stayed true to who you were, calm, grounded, and emotionally mature. That leaves a deeper impression than any grand farewell ever could. 2. She craves the calm you brought. In a world full of noise, you became the quiet she didn't know she needed. While others offered highs, distractions, and performances, you gave her presence. You didn't dominate conversations. You listened. You observed. You didn't try to control her emotions. You held space for them. And here's the thing. She may not have valued that calm at first. She may have mistaken your stillness for coldness, your boundaries for detachment. But now, surrounded by men who are emotionally erratic or validation hungry, she sees the difference. What once felt like distance now feels like discipline. What once seemed like silence now echoes as strength. She craves that peace. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Stoicism teaches power isn't in how loudly you speak, it's in how calmly you act. And that calm, that presence, it made her feel something she didn't even know she was missing: safety. That kind of emotional anchor. It's rare, and rare doesn't get replaced. 3. The unfinished chapter in her story. You didn't give her the ending she expected. No breakdown, no final "please understand me" speech. You just left. Quietly, respectfully, unapologetically. Now her mind is filled with questions. What did I miss? Why didn't he fight harder? Did I ever really understand him? You became the unresolved chapter in her story, not because you were dramatic, but because you were composed. And here's the truth. Some chapters don't need punctuation. They don't need closure. They end not with fire, but with clarity. That's what Stoic men understand. They don't perform for validation. They don't demand understanding. They walk in alignment with their peace. Now, she's left to face her own reflection. Not because you punished her, but because you didn't. Sometimes the most powerful question is the one that never gets answered, and that's what you became, not a memory, not a mistake, but a mystery. 4. Your growth makes you haunting. You didn't stay the same. You grew. You leveled up. You evolved. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And now, from a distance, she sees it. Maybe it's the calm in your eyes. Maybe it's the confidence in your posture. Maybe it's the quiet discipline in your routines. But whatever it is, she notices, because she remembers the version of you that waited, tried, explained. And now, you're none of those things. You no longer orbit around her perception. You no longer explain your worth. You've become a man rooted in purpose, not approval. And ironically, your silence speaks volumes. You didn't post cryptic messages. You didn't throw indirects. You just lived and kept growing. That's what haunts her. Because you weren't just a man she lost. You're now the man she could have grown with. And watching you rise without needing her approval, that stings in a way no words ever could. 5. You showed her depth in a shallow world. In a space filled with temporary thrills and digital performances, you gave her something real. You weren't transactional. You didn't flatter to get something in return. You gave presence without pressure, care without control. You were rare, and here's the truth. Depth doesn't need to scream. It echoes. She remembers the way you made her feel seen. Not for how she looked, but for who she was. You weren't interested in impressing her. You were interested in understanding her, and that kind of emotional intelligence is irreplaceable. Now, when she's surrounded by shallow compliments and performative attention, she sees the contrast, and she realizes you weren't just another man. You were the exception, the one who showed her that connection could be safe, grounded, whole. You didn't just pass through her life. You reflected something to her. What intimacy could actually feel like. And that memory, that depth, it doesn't fade. It haunts. 6. You let her feel your absence, not just your presence. Most men try to stay. You had the courage to walk when your value wasn't seen. And now your absence is louder than any presence ever could be. That's what Stoicism teaches us. If your presence doesn't inspire her to rise, your absence will. And here's what made it more powerful. You didn't storm out. You didn't try to teach her a lesson. You just stepped back, silently, deliberately, fully. Now the space where you once stood feels heavier because it's no longer filled with noise. It's filled with your absence. And that absence speaks. It says, I won't beg to be seen. I won't lower my peace for connection. I won't stay where I'm not valued. And that's unforgettable. Closing thoughts. So if you're wondering whether your silence mattered, it did. If you're questioning whether your absence was felt, it was. And if you're doubting whether your calm made a difference, let me tell you this. A man rooted in Stoic values, who leads with emotional maturity, presence, peace, and purpose, doesn't need drama to leave an impact. He becomes the standard, the contrast, the memory that lingers in quiet moments. Because while others were loud in her life, you were steady, and steady doesn't get forgotten. Call to action. Have you ever chosen peace over performance? Have you ever walked away quietly and later realized your presence had a bigger impact than you knew? Drop this in the comments. I chose growth over validation. Your story might just inspire someone else to level up in silence. Thanks for watching Psychology Truth, where inner strength becomes outer clarity. Until next time, stay grounded, stay stoic, stay powerful.